Welcome back to the D6 Family Ministry Podcast. We believe that discipleship should not be difficult, so we're here to help you connect the dots between church and home. Together, let's guide each generation, whether they're related to you or not, to stand confident in their faith. I'm your host, Ron Hunter, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Marianne Howard. Marianne, based on our interview today, let me ask you, what's one label that was verbally put on you as a kid, and how did you deal with it?
Well, you know that I've been in biblical counseling for quite some time now because of this very question. I was labeled early. My report card in the elementary years were I would get a needs improvement and a T for talking because I was talkative. And then as I grew up, you know, my personality was just so big and it was, you know, a lot, and I'm super passionate. And so a lot of people would label me as times 10. And it was kind of hurtful because especially going into my adulthood, it's like I'm passionate, but it came to a point of that I can be so much and so passionate about things that it's almost as though someone doesn't want to take me seriously because they think I'm constantly like exasperating or exaggerating how I'm communicating. And so I'm not saying there hasn't needed to be some sanctification in that and that I've needed to learn to kind of just like give the facts. And I mean, you and I work together and there's times that you're like, I need the facts and I need them in 5 minutes. And then there's sometimes that you're very grateful that I am passionate about things because, you know, the unique seat that I sit in with the organization, it's like I need to be passionate about D6 curriculum and I need to be passionate about the things that we do in ministry. And so, you know, it can be hurtful, but it can also be helpful. You know, God made me the way that I am, and He's used my passion and my communication style and my approach in very specific kingdom ways, and it's been coached and shaped over the years.
Yes.
And so we have to be really careful with labels. And so I just want to say our interview today is with one of our friends, Kim Bato, and she's so articulate and she's so good at helping us understand how we come across as ministry leaders for every child that comes to our ministry. And so listen to this clip really quick and just listen to this insight into creating environments for all kids.
When we know better, we do better. And kids aren't soft. They're precious and they're moldable at this age. And so we want to take care with them. I mean, they're created in the image of God.
All right, so you might ask yourself the same questions. How powerful are the words that were spoken into your life? Are we aware of the power of how our words are shaping the kiddos around us? They don't even have to be related to us, by the way. Remember that. Let's listen to Kim as she unpacks each part of this.
Does getting your whole church to engage with Scripture and care about discipleship feel nearly impossible? It doesn't have to be this way. D6 curriculum is intentionally designed to make discipleship accessible for your entire church without cutting any theological corners. All ages, from early elementary to grandparents, learn from the same biblical passages each week. By learning from the same passages, conversations across generations can become frequent and very natural. When we can bring up the lesson, there's an easy biblical connect. If you desire a church culture where parents can talk to the kids about God and where the youth and the adults comfortably share with one another what they're learning in Scripture, then D6 curriculum is perfect for you. To purchase or learn more, visit d6curriculum.com or click the link in the description below.
Today, I am joined by Kim Bato. For the past several decades, Kim has led children's and student ministries at the local church and initiatives around adoption and foster care. As an adoptive mom and special needs grandma, Kim's passion is creating fun and safe environments for all kids, regardless of their personality, unique needs, or energy level, so they can experience God and grow in their faith. Kim, thank you for being here today.
Thank you, David.
Well, today we are talking about a topic that I think is very needed, and that is, do we look at kids as treasures or troublemakers?
Yep.
I am married to an educator. My wife works at a middle school, so she gets to see this every day in some fashion. And then we also deal with this in the church. Before we dive too deep into this, though, I'd like to know why this topic is so meaningful to you.
Well, first of all, Jesus says, let the children come to me. And he doesn't qualify which kids. So because he doesn't qualify it, I assume that he means all kids, even the ones that may have challenging behaviors, even the ones that might not be able to articulate their needs with words. So that's part of my reason, because I believe that it's what we're called to do by Jesus. And then the other is I have always been passionate about the kid who on the playground is sitting outside the circle, or the kid at church who just has difficulty fitting in. And I believe that kids who are hard are the biggest opportunity in the church. It's the biggest challenge and the biggest opportunity.
Well, labeling someone as a troublemaker sounds more like something you'd hear in school than something you'd hear in church. I was a rule follower. I listened to what the teacher said, but we had a substitute teacher one day that called me a troublemaker in school. And I still remember this. This was elementary school.
So is this triggering you, David?
A little bit. I did not remember that until now.
Oh, gosh.
But it stuck with me, like that label, that troublemaker.
Yes.
And I thought, me? Like, you just put this, as a kid, I'm thinking, you put a label on me, and I was upset about it. What's a better way to view our kids with challenging behaviors?
Okay. Well, first of all, I want to say, David, the fact that this was all those years ago and you still remember, kids believe what we say about them. And I'm sure that teacher didn't mean to harm you in any way, but that has been sitting in your mind for all these years. And in church, yeah, we might not be calling them out loud, troublemaker or distraction. However, even if we think that, if we think, oh, this kid, he's going to mess up my plans, we're going to respond to their behavior in a different way than if we look at this kid and say, this kid is a treasure. This kid is an image bearer. Then if they do something that maybe we don't deem socially, acceptable, because it isn't, we're going to respond with more patience and love and grace.
And if that teacher's listening to this, I want you to think about what you did. Now, it was really over 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And it still is there.
Our words matter. Our words make a huge impact on kids. And I will say it again. Kids believe what we say.
That's encouraging and also scary at the same time. I'm having these flashbacks just to think both good things and bad things, because, we do believe what people say.
And our words can either build up or they can tear down. So let's choose words that build up. And David, I want to tell you that you are not a troublemaker, that look how you are contributing to expanding the kingdom by getting people stories. So any remnant of that's left, because see, people can come around us and use words to change the beliefs we have about ourselves. So you are not a troublemaker.
Thank you. Well, one thing that you've talked about is that we shouldn't necessarily be trying to fix or control our kids who are dealing with challenging behaviors. What should we be doing instead?
Well, first of all, you have kids?
I do have a 5-year-old.
Okay. Can you control your child?
Not at all.
Okay. You
No.
can't. So why should we even try to control them? We can't. What we can do is we control ourselves. And there's a quote, I can't remember the name of the guy, but it says, when a flower doesn't bloom, we fix the environment, not the flower. So what we can do, instead of attempting to control a child that we can't control, we can control ourselves, and also we can adjust the behavior to make it a better setting for this kid to really learn and grow, to know who Jesus is, to grow in their faith, to make relationships with peers and leaders. And I would say, too, I think one of the biggest tools for us in children's ministry is to be curious. When a kid's not behaving in the way we want, think about what's underneath that behavior, because there is something underneath that behavior.
I know for me, both as a parent and then also working in a church and things like that, that it's easy to view those kids through just my own lens. Like, I was the well-behaved kid, I was the quiet kid, I did what I was told. And so there's a tendency for me to think, well, these kids should be doing the same thing. If I could do it, they could do it. I don't want to say what's wrong with them, but sometimes that enters our head.
Sure.
What's the best way that we can go about actually changing ourselves to make sure that we're not just reacting to what's going on or thinking, well, they should be better than this. I was raised better than this. They should be better than this. How can we make sure that we're actually doing what we're supposed to be doing?
I think it's through what we want to do then, like what you're talking about. Really, you don't have empathy for that child. You're going, just behave. And through science, stories, and statistics, we can build empathy. Because if we look into the science of what happens to a child who's experienced trauma, it changes their brain. They may be in fear mode. So you might think, well, they're totally safe here in my children's ministry, but really they're afraid. So when certain things happen, it could threaten them, and then they're going to act in a way that you think isn't appropriate. But when you look at them as a scared kid, you're going to react differently than you are when you look at them as an out-of-control kid. Or with statistics, CDC released last year, 1 out of 36 kids are being diagnosed with autism. And their brains aren't wrong, they're just different. They don't need to be fixed, they're misunderstood. So what we can do is look at how we might make our environment better for a kid with autism. And one thing might be something as simple as having visual schedules. They need to see it. They can't just hear it.
I really like that. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to continue talking to Kim about the ways we can look at our kids as treasures rather than troublemakers. We'll be right back.
Are you ready for the families in your church to shift from a culture of passivity to a culture of intentional faith at home? Getting parents to take their role as the primary disciple makers of their children can feel impossible, but D6 Home Point is here to help. The D6 Home Point Church Resource Center provides practical, relevant tools for families at every life stage, making intentionality a breeze. Our customizable resource center is easy to use and flexible for churches of any size. Ready for the families in your church to start taking at-home discipleship seriously? Use D6 Home Point. To learn more, visit d6homepoint.com or follow the link in the description.
We're back, and we're talking to Kim Botto about how we can view our kids as treasures rather than troublemakers. Now, I've heard parents of special needs children say they've been told by those in the church, I'm sorry, but we just don't have anything for your child here. And I heard this recently. It was, we don't have anything for your child here. They're too disruptive for children's ministry. Either they need to come sit with you during church or politely, kindly, please don't come back, which is very rough. But they said they have been asked either to leave the church or to have their child leave children's ministry. What can a church do to fill in these gaps even before a need presents itself? Because I'm guessing if we're waiting to react to the need that's there, it's already too late. So what can we do to fill in these gaps now?
Well, first of all, I want to say the experience that the person you talk to, that's true. That happens. Eric Carter did research, and 1 out of 3 families with kids with special needs have either been directly asked to not leave their kid in kids ministry, or because of the demeanor of all the volunteers when they drop their kid off or pick the kid up, the family clearly understands that this is not a place for their kid. And as a church, we need to understand that we don't just lose the kid. We lose the whole family. We lose mom, we lose dad, we lose the siblings. One of the ways that we can get ahead of it is using statistics and stories and science to start to build empathy in our volunteers now. For if a child does come in with behavior that's hard, to understand, oh, there is a need underneath that behavior. And so what might we do to help the kid feel safe and have fun in our environment? I think too many churches, well, for one, they wait. But if 1 out of 36 kids is diagnosed with autism and 2 out of 3 kids experience trauma in their childhood, churches, you do have children in your ministry that have behaviors or needs the result of something that is absolutely out of their control. So we need to start changing now. We can bring in people, teachers who work in special education in the schools, occupational therapists to help give us tools. There are trainings like here at D6 that tell us how to make our environments welcoming for all kids.
I'm going to ask you a question that may step on some toes, get a little uncomfortable here.
Oh, I love that. Go.
But you mentioned we need to train these volunteers. We need to get, knowledge is power when it comes to this. The flip side, there's some that are still going to take an old school approach. It's one of those things, if they can't see it, then they don't believe it. You know, if you see someone that has a cast on their leg and crutches, well, they've got a broken leg, I believe it. But they may not be able to see autism from a distance.
Right.
And so they just don't believe it. And you hear people talk about, well, kids today are soft. Kids today, they're just not being raised right. They need to be raised better. And they kind of just almost are in denial about what kids are dealing with. If we have some of those people in our church, and I hope we don't, but if we do, and they're working with children's ministry or youth ministry, is there a point where we may just need to say, you know what? This may not be the best fit for you. Let's find somewhere else for you to serve.
Oh, for sure. Because serving in children's ministry is a privilege, not a right. And for some, it's just not the right place for them to serve. And for us to continue to enable them to serve in a place that doesn't match their gifts and passions, shame on us. We're not just kicking them out. It's sitting down and having a great conversation with them about what are you passionate about? What do you love doing? I mean, I've helped a lot of volunteers. Well, not a lot. Well, yeah, pretty many actually. Transition to maybe it's the welcome team in the atrium. Maybe it's the coffee team. Maybe they're really not a people person, and emptying garbage cans on Sunday morning is a better role for them. If it's not the right fit, it's not good for anybody. And I would say, like some of the comments that you said they might be making, when we know better, we do better. And kids aren't soft. They're precious and they're moldable at this age. And so we want to take care with them. I mean, they're created in the image of God. And if someone isn't able to do that, then bless and release.
Preach it. That's good. Well, as we close, I want to turn our attention to the parents of the kids.
Yes.
How can the church minister to the parents of kids with challenging behaviors?
Oh, thank you for asking that. Parents who have kids who have challenging behavior in the church, these kids are probably having challenging behavior everywhere. So what that means is everywhere they go, they're being told something negative about their child. I had a situation with a little preschooler who actually cussed me out. And I watched what my face was communicating. I sat down with him. I connected with him first and then corrected him on his language. Well, and then we had a lovely conversation. When his mom came up and saw me sitting in the hall, her head went down. You could tell that shame was creeping in. She's like, oh no, what did he did? And I told her, we have had the best time. I've had the best conversation with him. I told her some of the things that we had talked about. And she pulled me aside and said, no one has ever told me that they're glad to have my kid in their church. So that's one thing we can do. We can point out the positives we see in the kid. Because if we believe that they're created in the image of Christ, there is good in them. And sometimes we have to look a little bit harder. And another thing is realizing the stress that it takes to raise a kid who has special needs, neurodiversity, disabilities. There was research that showed moms of kids who are autistic, they have the stress level cortisone, the stress hormone cortisone, it's at the same level as active combat soldiers.
Oh, wow.
So these moms are under tremendous stress. And if we can come alongside them, that doesn't mean that we just let anything go, but talk to the parents about what's best for your kid. How can we make this environment better for them? Maybe they need noise canceling headphones. Maybe they need a buddy where they can go out in the hall and take a break. But Jesus calls us to minister to everybody. And I would even say, especially, well, actually, there's some verses about that. It's for the sick. It's for the parents that are having a really hard time. It's for kids that don't fit in and aren't accepted other places.
I appreciate you sharing this. It's just such another reminder that all people are created in the image of God.
Yes.
All people have worth and dignity. And as a church, we have the unbelievable opportunity to show this to children, to show this to families, and treat our children as treasures.
Yes.
Kim, thank you so much for being here
Thank
and
you,
sharing this.
David.
You know, I always love that Kim causes me to evaluate my leadership in the church. And, you know, she really, calls out environment. That environment plays a huge part. And she brings about things to evaluate an environment. She said schedule, setup, tone, and training. Those were her 4 areas that she wanted us to focus on in terms of what kind of environment are you creating. And listen, ministry leader, your environment shouldn't be conducive just to you. We've got to make environments for kids. You know, our student ministry, and we have several special needs represented in our student ministry. And I have loved that our student pastor has been very strategic in making sure there are quiet spaces, there are engaging spaces for tactile learners to listen with their hands. There's just lots of different, things that we can do to adjust our environment in helping everyone learn and receive God's word.
My favorite insight she gave was there's a need underneath that behavior. So if there is a behavior that you would love to talk to a parent about, pause and ask, what is that behavior crying out to you saying?
Yeah.
And ask if there's a misplaced label that we can adjust for ministry opportunity.
That's right.
That would be the direction I would challenge you to go.
Yes.
So as we look at that, how do you want to challenge our listeners?
Yeah, I want to just leave the soundbite that Kim left. Serving in children's ministry or serving in ministry, period, is a privilege, not a right. And we've got to treat it that way. And so that's my challenge to our audience this week is, remember that this is a calling from God, for God, and it's a privilege, not a right. And so I just pray that our attitudes and our hearts and our perspectives and our approaches this week reflect privilege and the heart of gratitude that we get to do this. Thank you so much for joining us this week. Next week, we're going to hear from Timothy Paul Jones, and he's going to address diversity in the church and how to have a missional mindset as we disciple effectively. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed listening to this episode, please consider subscribing or leaving a 5-star review. It always helps us out when you do that. To learn more, visit d6family.com, and we look forward to seeing you next week.